Hey guys, I'm Metagrit. Welcome back to my channel. Today, I want to do something a little bit different. Instead of going over a new deck profile or a new strategy or combo, today I want to kind of take a step back and break down how it is that you can become a better competitive Yu-Gi-Oh player. And I know I'm not a YCS champion or very well known in the community. I've only been playing competitively for about a year or so. However, I think I can provide a unique perspective on how to become better at Yu-Gi-Oh! As a beginner, because I am day in and day out putting in the hours to try and become a better player and learning through experience and trial and error, as opposed to somebody who's already accomplished a lot. And maybe, somebody who's already accomplished a lot is a little bit harder to relate to someone who's trying to get into Yu-Gi-Oh! In 2024. So here's one lesson I want to show you guys that I've learned over this past year of really trying to become good at Yu-Gi-Oh! And especially trying to become good at Yu-Gi-Oh! Using bad decks. Because I like to play Cyber Dragons, I like to play Ancient Gears or Structure decks, or just something that's very low rogue. And I try to make those decks as competitive as possible. And in that process, I've discovered some really cool things along the way. And today I wanted to share one of those things with you guys. So today's lesson is going to be about how to find out if a card is useful as opposed to finding out if a card is powerful. So here's an example of a card that's really powerful but not very useful in Yu-Gi-Oh! So if you have any two dragon monsters, you Dragon Link players will know you can link summon for Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. I'll put the card up on the screen for you guys to read its effects. And a cool combo you can kind of do with this card is on your opponent's turn, you could tribute it from the extra monster zone to return one of your opponent's cards that's face up to their hand. So you can return a normal summon, you can return a field spell or continuous spell that they try to activate, so that way they won't get that effect to resolve. And then, because your seal was tributed, you can use its other effect on a new chain to summon a dragon from your deck. And you can even turn this into an interruption all of its own. You can special summon something like Fallen of Albaz, for example. Then if you have a card to discard, you can discard it, and then activate Fallen of Albaz effect to fusion summon using a monster your opponent controls. And itself, you can fusion something like Mirror Jade, Ice Blade Dragon. And this is really cool because Mirror Jade just needs Fallen of Albaz plus one Fusion Synchro XYZ or Link monster. So if your opponent has a Link monster on the field or whatever type of cards they summon from the extra deck, you can use that monster as material for your Mirror Jade. And so you've turned your Hieratic Seal, the Heavenly Spheres, into a 3K beater, but you've also returned one of their cards to the hand and used one of their cards as material. So it's become two interruptions, and then of course you can use Mirror Jade to Foolish one of your Albaz fusions. So you play Albion, you can Foolish this to banish one of your opponent's cards. And so now it's three interruptions plus the body, and then during the end phase your Albion can trigger. It can search your deck for a branded spell trap. So off of just your Hieratic Seal, you're able to get one interruption plus a body, plus a follow-up, and two interruptions, plus it itself is its own interruption. So three interruptions plus a body plus follow-up. That's a lot of value off of one card. I don't think anyone would argue that Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres is a super powerful Yu-Gi-Oh card. It just is. However, one mistake that a lot of casual players, or maybe players who aren't as good at Yu-Gi-Oh make, is they look at a card like Seal and go, wow, this is a really powerful card, and that combo with Fallen of Albaz is really cool, so I'm going to play this in my Dragon deck, and it's going to be really good, and I'm going to win a lot of duels because it's super powerful. But just because it's really powerful, it doesn't mean that it's very useful, and when a card is useful in Yu-Gi-Oh, it helps you win duels. Power doesn't necessarily win you duels. Let me show you what I mean. Let's say I'm going up against a veteran player, okay? I have my Seal on the field, and they normal summon a monster, and I'm kind of waiting there till they link summon so I can use that monster as material. But then, instead of link summoning, they go straight to the battle phase, and then they attack my Seal. Because it has 0 attack, it's just going to die. So they force out its effects, so I tribute it to return their monster to hand, and then they combo off in main phase 2 because they have nothing on the field for me to fusion with my Albaz, or if I have Burning Dragon, there's nothing for me to destroy with my Burning Dragon. My Seal just ends up being one interruption that cost me 2 bodies to make in the first place. And so with just their normal summon, even if their normal summon has 0 attack, they can still out my spheres or force out its interaction. So a seasoned veteran will easily play around your Seal, and there's nothing you can really do about it. Obviously, you can play other cards to complement that strategy, but even if you spot remove your opponent's normal summon, they can still summon any other monster and go straight to the battle phase. And as long as they are willing to sacrifice their battle phase, you're going to end up losing that resource battle with your opponent, and you're not going to get your cool Mirror Jade combo off, and you're going to lose. So even though this is an extremely powerful effect, it's not a very useful one. Okay? Just want to point that out as a case example because a lot of players will do things similar where they'll find a really cool combo or card or deck and they'll go, this is really powerful, but it doesn't mean that it's necessarily useful. Let me show you, in contrast to Seal, let me show you a card that is far weaker in terms of its effect, but far more useful. Okay? I'm going to grab Danger Nessie. Now, Danger Nessie is a card you won't see in too many decks, maybe like a Dark World deck, right? Which topped YCS Rio not too long ago. Let's say I have my opening hand, my Dark World hand, and one of my cards is the Danger Nessie. Now, Danger Nessie all on its own, all it does, I'll put it up on the screen so you guys can read it. All the Danger cards work the same way. Basically, your opponent discards a random card. If they don't discard your Danger monster, you special summon your Danger monster and you draw a card. Okay? That's all it does. And you might think, well, that's not nearly as useful as Hieratic Seal of the Heavenly Spheres. That's not multiple interruptions. There's no way that Danger Nessie can be as good, but I trust me, Danger Nessie's effect is much more useful, even without the context of a Dark World deck. But anyways, what I want to talk about is why Danger Nessie is much more useful than something like Hieratic Seal, the Heavenly Spheres. Let's say that your opponent has gone first, and they have their whole board set up. And let's say your opponent is playing a stun deck. So they have something like a barrier statue on field, and you can't summon from your extra deck. Well, or you can't summon any monsters at all. Your danger cards actually still work. Your dangers don't require you to summon them. They don't even require you to draw cards. Let's say you're under Droll and Lockbird and you can't summon. You can actually just use their effects and then discard them. And so Danger Nessie has its own effect when it gets discarded instead of one of your other cards. Okay, so instead of summoning and drawing, when it gets discarded, you can activate its effect to search for a danger monster. So I guess Nessie wouldn't be the best under Droll and Lockbird per se, but something like Danger Bigfoot would be really good. Because if you can't summon, you can just keep activating Danger Bigfoot until it hits itself, and then it'll activate its effect when it's discarded to destroy a face-up card on the field. So your Danger Bigfoot works under Droll and Lockbird, it works when you can't summon any monsters, and it works when you can summon, and it works when you're not under Droll and Lockbird. It also works under Dimension Shifter. All the danger cards will trigger if they're discarded, not if they're discarded and sent to the graveyard, not if they're discarded by card effect, if they're discarded by any means, so even if they're discarded for cost for another card's effect, they still get to trigger. And so you're either summoning a card to the field and drawing a card, or you're using their effect when they are discarded. So it doesn't really matter what your opponent has on field. Let's say your opponent has an Ash Blossom in their hand, okay? Well, they can negate your danger effect with an Ash Blossom, but none of the danger effects in hand are once per turn. So if your opponent has Appaloosa or Ash Blossom, and they don't have a negate and destroy, they just have a card that negates, right? You can just activate the danger monster again after they negated it, and they just wasted whatever card they used to try and stop your danger monster. So there's no hand trap that really beats any of the danger monsters. There's no game state, right? You can't summon, you can't, you're under there can only be one. You you're under Droll and Lockbird, you're under D-Shifter, there's no game state that prevents you from using any of the danger monsters. And I'm going to show you guys a deck from YCS Rio a couple weeks ago, and the average cost of a deck in this tournament was $530. This deck only costs about $100, a little more than $100, and it was Danger Dark World, and it topped in this Tier 0 format with new power creep decks being introduced in Legacy of Destruction like Tenpai Dragons and the Melodious engine. Super expensive decks right and left. This deck won without SP Little Knight in its extra deck. It won without a lot of other cards that you might want to see in any generic extra deck like Typhon, like Zeus, but no. This deck was able to top with basically a very modest Dark World engine, and I think even the main deck, let alone the extra deck, wasn't even built optimally. I think there's a better deck list that you'll find for Danger Dark World. But nonetheless, this deck was able to top and got top 32. It cost a minor fraction of the cost of these other decks. And it was a huge meta call. And I think one of the reasons why it was such a good meta call is because of the danger cards. People really don't realize how flexible they are. People don't realize, the potential that you have. It's not just Danger Bigfoot, but cards like Danger Thunderbird can also act as an interruption. And Nessie can search either of these cards, so that's really flexible as well. And of course, if you're playing it in tandem with Dark World, you're going to have cards like Grapha, you're going to have cards like Snow and Rainbow. These cards let you search. This card lets you destroy your opponent's cards when they get discarded, so obviously dangers are that much better in Dark World. I think a lot of people are surprised to see that somebody topped YCS Rio in this format with dangers, Dark Worlds. However, I'm not surprised in the least because dangers, while they aren't the most powerful cards in Yu-Gi-Oh!, they certainly are some of the most useful cards in Yu-Gi-Oh! And that's the lesson I want to share with you guys. As you go and try and build your Cyber Dragons or whatever deck that you love, as you try to compete either casually or go into high-tier events with your Cyber Dragons or whatever deck you like during a format like this, just think about not necessarily having the most powerful cards, right? Don't always go for the most powerful cards, but go for cards that are much more useful, cards that are useful in a wide variety of circumstances and not in certain specific scenarios. Because the odds are, if your cards are useful in certain scenarios, then your opponent is going to be able to play around. They're going to have a way to get around your interruption because it's specific to a certain scenario. So sometimes being much more generic and being much more weak is better than the alternative. And I think that's a testament to why Danger Dark World topped. It's a testament to why runic cards are so accessible for modern decks. They are almost always going to have some sort of effect that's viable, if not turning on your whole engine and getting your whole deck rolling, right? Even if they don't do that, runic cards are at the very least basic interruptions against your opponent that are very flexible and easy to use. So that's it for this lesson today, guys. Stay tuned to the channel. I plan on doing a couple more examples of how you can get better at Yu-Gi-Oh! Competitively in the future. But until then, duel on.